So this is my turn to speak to you, to do my best to inspire you. But first, a joke. 3-year-old goes to his mother and shows her this dead fly, says, "Look, I killed this fly." And then the girl had a pickle in the other hand, and the woman was worried about that. So she took her daughter to the sink and washed her hands real good before giving her back the pickle. And while she's eating the pickle, the mother wonders how this 3-year-old coordinated enough to kill a fly. So asks her, and the girl says, "I hit it with the pickle." My talk for the day: when the rubber hits the road. You know, there are times in our life we walk around with theory. We walk around thinking, if this ever happened to me, this is how I would react. But what I've learned in my life is sometimes I don't know until the rubber hits the road. And it's that point in which our true character, the true nature of who we are in that moment, comes forth. And from that, we get to see, is this true nature that is coming forth in line with who I envision myself to be? If the answer is yes, great. But if the answer is not yes, we get to take a look at that. We get to see what it is we need to help support us in moving forward to being our highest and best. I am clear that the hardships of life, the opportunities that present itself to us, that we may see as something we need to somehow overcome to make our lives better, are really just tests of character. That's all we're doing here, is bringing forth our best character into the world. Howard, during his prayer this morning, was talking about looking at what we can do to better the world. And when we act from the highest and best of our character, no matter what the situation, we have done that. We have bettered the world. There was a time when I was, before I was very deep in, when I was just beginning my path into Native American ceremonies in terms of sweat lodges and pipe ceremonies and vision quests and all that, we did a fire walk at our church. And I made a big noise around wanting to be one of the fire keepers at this particular fire walk. That's really what I wanted. I wanted to be one of the guys who put out the, who made the fire for everybody to walk across in that ceremony. I was very big about wanting to do that. And they said yes. John and Barbara said, okay, you get to be one of the fire keepers at this particular fire walk. During the same period of time, they had approved my son, who was 12, to be one of the people who was allowed to walk across the fire. And no one besides him under 18 was ever allowed to walk across the fire. It was a huge honor they gave him because he was in practitioner studies at the time. At 12, the youngest to be in practitioner studies in the entire movement. The day came of the firewalk, and I woke up thinking to myself, what am I doing? Being at this fire instead of being with my son. And so, as embarrassing as it was, because of all the noise I made to become a fire keeper for that fire, I called up the people in charge and said, I can't do it. I need to be sitting next to my son, go through the whole process with my son, and walk across that fire with my son. Now, luckily, they understood, and it took them all 5 minutes to find somebody to replace me because there were so many people wanting to do that. But it spoke to me that day that it didn't actually occur to me until the day of the walk itself, till the rubber hits the road moment, that something in me rose to tell me what was true for me, what was really true for me. Because up to that moment, I thought, Isaac will be fine. It's no big deal. I'll be right there. I won't be in the workshop, but I'll be at the fire. And when he comes out, I'll be there. It's no big deal. I had fully convinced myself of that. Have you ever done that? Fully convinced yourself of something that turned out not to be true. Now, sometimes when we fully convince ourselves of something that turns out not to be true, our sense of embarrassment is larger than our character, than the truth of what we want to bring forward. Our sense of disappointing others, our sense of, it's too late. It's too late to change direction. And I am here to tell you today that it is never too late to allow your true self to rise. Don't let those things get in your way. The thoughts of embarrassment, the idea that something else is more important than your truth, because we need people, as many people as we can find on this planet, who are willing to bring forth what is real for them, what is true for them, what is who they have come here to be for them. Now, each of us has to make our own choices around this. And I am certainly not one to judge somebody else's choices, because I've made a ton of bad ones myself. But, what I could look at as a bad choice, I certainly learned from. And that's what we're doing all the time, right? We're learning from that which we have brought forth. But there is never a train heading down a direction, going too fast and too hard, that can't be turned around by the strength of character of one. Trish, last week, talked about Donald Trump, the true character of her standing up for his health when he, when it would have been easy to say, wow, it's a really good thing he's sick, and boy, this really yada, 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 yada. But she didn't do that. She put all that aside for what was real, for who she wants to be in the world, and stood for her truth, which is health and well-being for all people. It was beautiful. It was beautiful to be in the presence of somebody who would stand that way. Thank you, Trish, for that. My favorite story around this comes from when Gandhi was freeing India from the British. The movement had been moving forward well. More and more people were getting on board. More and more Indians were just getting on the idea that, yes, we actually can get the British out of India. The movement was rushing forward, but then all of a sudden, it stopped only being peaceful. All of a sudden, there were people who were doing riots, who were attacking the British. And Gandhi saw this and said, no, this is not the way to do this. This is not who I came here to be, to lead. This is not who we want to be as a people. And so he said, we have to stop the movement. We have to stop it. We have to stop all of it. There wasn't a single person who agreed with him. In a country of, at that time, I think it was 600 to 800 million people. Not one person agreed with Gandhi about stopping the movement that was moving forward to get the British out of India. He had no one on his side. Talk about stopping a train and how one person can do it. So he decided, well, I will not participate in any movement that has any violence at all. In fact, if people consider this, since this is the movement I started, since others are continuing in my name, I will not eat another morsel, nor drink another drop of water until not just the violence stops, but the entire movement. Man, what a stance to take in the name of character, in the name of truth. Whew. I don't remember how long he had to fast for. I believe it was definitely over 10 days. I think he was drinking some water at that point, because I don't think you can survive that long without water. Though but little by little, the entire country came around, not because they agreed with him, but because no one wanted him to die. That his character was so strong in the hearts of people because he stood for something that mattered so deeply that the entire country stopped a movement that was millions, hundreds of millions strong at that point. I love that story. He was willing to die for what he believed was his truth and character, even if it meant the British would never leave India. That was not his most important priority. And that's the thing. We, each of us, can easily get caught up in what we think is a priority. Whether it be success in a business, or whether it be protecting whatever it is we think needs protecting. And in that moment, we do that, give up who we truly are. But when there are those who are willing to say no, nothing, absolutely nothing is worth me giving up the true nature of who I came here to be. When enough of us stand in that place, humanity will be healed. All the protests in the world will not heal humanity as much as each of us being willing to stand for the highest and best of who we are within us and in how we behave in the world. That's what makes it true. That's what will make the difference in the world. Someone you guys have heard me talk about before, Palden Gyatso, captured by the Chinese, tortured for close to 30 years, almost every day, cattle prod, put in his mouth, lost all his teeth, burns over 80% of his body. And when he was asked what he thought about while all this was going on, he said his only concern was not loving the Chinese who were doing this to him. That was his only concern, not what they were doing to his body. And boy, that must have hurt. I know how stubborn my toe hurts. Happened just the other day twice. Same toe. I stubbed the same toe twice in like an hour period. And that really, really hurt. And that's nothing compared to what this guy went through for 30 years. And the Dalai Lama calls him the most enlightened guy on the planet. I just imagine what it would be like for more of us to stand in that place. The impact it would have on all of us. I know the impact that Palden Gyatso has had on me. When I think about my suffering compared to his, It allows me to see from a place of beauty, light, and love. From that place, I see how all of life is moving in that direction. We need to remember that God is not just in all the good in the world. God is in everything we think of as good, bad, or in whatever. Spirit is everything. And the more of us who can hold that place and take action from that place, then the actions we take will truly be in line with healing. Remember that any time you take action, any of us takes action that is in defiance of something else, we have set up a separation that doesn't actually exist. We have set up a separation within ourselves because we are now dividing. When we divide out in the world, we have divided within ourselves. This is a rough concept. I'm not saying there's anything about this that's easy at all. But when the rubber hits the road, the real choice to be made is who we will be in that moment. And from that, what we will do. But if we take action before we have chosen the who, if we do the what before the who, the results are not healing, no matter how good they may look. We are on a continuum that is infinite, or maybe finite, but billions of years long. It is headed in a very particular direction. We can tell this because our consciousness keeps evolving, not devolving. So we know that evolution is part of our nature, which means whatever division we see will someday come to being non-existent, will come to being in a way of us perceiving part of the one that it already is. These are tough times. There is a lot of divisiveness around our elections. There's a lot of divisiveness around how this virus should be handled. A lot of fear. But it is up to us as the light bearers to be bigger than this. The way Trish was last week when she prayed for our president. This is what we need more of. We need more of standing in the place where Gandhi knew that the British leaving was not as important as the soul of his country. Where Palden Gyatso knew that his soul was more important than his body. The more of us that can remember this, the more of us that can move forward from a place of light, that is the healing that will ultimately be the domain of what happens to our world. All is one is not just a saying. It's an absolute truth. How often we can bring that to our rubber hits the road moments. How often we can bring forth that which is most precious in our character. Those are the moments that speak to the larger whole and make a difference in the world. Thank you. I love you. That's my talk for today. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What I give, I receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.